Well, hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we just finished watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are doing Season 7, Episode 25. That is the season and series finale, and this is part 2. So if you're diving in here to hear us talk about the season finale, you should go and listen to the previous episode first.
Part 1 is kind of important, otherwise a lot of this will not make sense.
That is true. And in this one, we'll do the second half. I think we should get going. I'm very worried we're going to be here for hours.
At least the rest of the week.
At least the rest of the week, yeah.
Hopefully for our listeners, it won't seem like it's forever.
No, they'll like it. Well, we're talking about the episode What You Leave Behind, which aired June 2nd, 1999. And just a reminder, the last thing to happen at the end of what we're calling Part 1 was Kira and Garak break through into the Dominion headquarters on Cardassia, where they find a very defiant and predictably unpleasant and flaky founder.
Yes, she's reaching maximum flaky.
And at this point, we've also seen the last of Damar, sadly, and of Weyoun.
I liked him.
Series wrap for both of them.
I miss Weyoun.
He's only been gone for us for like a day. I guess for you for a long time.
Yes.
Okay, so we start on the Defiant, and Sisko and Odo are relieved to hear from Kira, who calls them from Dominion headquarters.
Yes.
She tells them about the founder refusing to tell her troops to stand down, and Worf observes that if she dies before they surrender, the Jem'Hadar will fight to the last man.
Okay, did everybody forget the episode The Ship, where the founder died, and all the Jem'Hadar under their command killed themselves because the founder died?
Yes, but if she's given them this order to fight until the last man, no matter what happens to her.
Yeah, I wonder how that works.
Yeah, but did they forget that they did that? 100%. And also, it's a good thing there's no women fighting, because they'd probably just give up if they're going to fight to the last man.
Yeah.
Odo wants to beam down and try to reason with the founders. Sisko points out that he hasn't had much success with that in the past.
Understatement of the entire series.
True. But Odo says it's worth trying to try and avoid any more loss of life.
This is why Odo's so great.
Oh, yeah, Odo is the best person in this whole series, which is quite funny, since he's not a person.
He's a being.
Well, and I guess you get a little leeway to make him even more noble, because he's not human, and he doesn't have the failings of humanity. He's got the failings of his own race, but not so much, because he wasn't raised by them.
The genocidal supremacist baggage of his people.
Right.
He could almost be Cardassian.
Back to the fire caves of Bajor, and Winn has gotten out the good wine again. You know, the bottle that she was going to give to Sisko for his wedding and changed her mind.
You were thinking the same thing as me. I wonder if this is the good wine.
For sure. She's chanting something in Bajoran, and she gets to the point of drinking from this chalice that she's holding. But instead of drinking, she hands it to Dukat, and she smiles, saying, "After you." He says he's honored. But oh, Dukat, you've been tricked. After he drinks from it and hands it back to Winn, she dumps it out. Dukat suddenly convulses and falls to his knees. Smugly, Winn says, "The Pa race demanded a sacrifice. Someone worthy of them. Who better than you?"
It's hard to disagree with her there. Dukat's had this coming for a long time.
Oh, from her and from everybody else on Bajor. Dukat falls to the ground and rolls onto his back, seemingly dead. And Kim shouts, "Hurrah!" Delusional now with power, Winn pledges her allegiance to the Pa Wraiths, shouting, "Coast Emojin, I am yours now and forever."
It's nice that she's found a religion she can really take part in.
Yes.
That she really feels part of.
Yeah, that's right. Because she didn't really believe in the prophets, and she'd never really felt anything from them, but she is feeling this.
Yes. It's kind of funny and tragic at the same time.
It is. I have a lot about that in my overanalysis. It would be surprising, I would think, for anybody who's listened to this podcast, that I wouldn't have a lot of analysis about Kai Winn in the end.
I'm certainly not.
Back to Cardassia, and now the image that we've seen many times of the city is completely different. Buildings are in ruins, everything is on fire, it's a total disaster area.
Oh, yeah.
Odo beams down to the room with Kira and the founder, and they have a surprisingly cool reception with each other, I thought. It's like, oh, been a long time. They don't even hug, they don't touch each other. That was odd, I thought.
Yeah, strangely cool is the best way of putting it.
Yeah, considering just a few minutes ago, Odo thought she might be dead.
Right.
They didn't know if she was alive. Well, Kira warns Odo not to trust the founder, and he asks if she trusts him, and Kira says, of course. And
Oh,
Odo
yeah.
says, that's all I need to know. And he turns to the founder.
That's really important, I think, because earlier when Sisko asked him and said, you won't take matters into your own hand, I think that was making Odo feel that he wasn't trusted, that Sisko specifically had to ask him. And now with Kira, he just says, do you trust me? And there's no qualifiers.
No.
It's just yes.
The founder woman says, you're looking well, Odo. Maybe a little jealous, because she is not.
And you're looking a little flaky.
And she tells him she has no intention of surrendering and showing any weakness. It would be an invitation for the solids to cross into the Gamma Quadrant and destroy the Great Link.
Isn't the Great Link already destroyed? She's
Yeah.
already said her people are dying.
Yeah, it's like, what are you holding on for?
Right. I think maybe some of this is her horror at not being the winner.
At losing, yeah.
This is the first time, maybe, they've got to realize they're not the gods that they think they are.
Oh, completely.
This is everything she believes in crashing down.
And imagine if she knew before this that the Federation had caused the sickness.
Yeah.
She doesn't know that yet.
Oh, that would be even better.
Odo tells her the Federation doesn't desire conquest, and when she brings up the Romulans and the Klingons, he tells her they're in no shape to wage war on anyone, and besides, the Federation wouldn't allow it. She kind of scoffs, but
Yeah.
she knows that she spent the last 2 years at war with the Federation, and she says, and now you're asking me to put our fate into their hands. And Odo simply says, yes. But of course she says, I don't have your faith in the solids. Odo says, perhaps I can change your mind, link with me. But she says she can't. The disease prevents her from changing form. Kira protests in the background.
Right.
But Odo tells the founder he believes he can cure her, which makes Garrick say, this is a very bad idea, Constable. Kira agrees, but he says he knows what he's doing, and he asks the founder again. When Garrick raises his disruptor, Kira, trusting Odo, convinces him to put it down.
That's a big leap for Kira. Every time the evil founder woman has gotten involved with Odo, it's gone really badly for Odo.
Yes, and for her, for Kira.
Yeah, talk about leap of faith.
Yep. The evil founder puts out her hand to Link, and we get some standard goo time. She quickly reforms back into her unflaky original form.
All nice and smooth again.
Yeah. She asks Garrick to stand aside so she can order the ceasefire. Garrick wants to restrain her in a containment field, but Odo tells them she's not going to try to escape. She's agreed to stand trial and take responsibility for what she's done. Everybody is a little surprised, but she walks over to the console and does that. Kira privately tells Odo she thought the founder would insist on returning to the Gamma Quadrant to cure her people, but Odo says, there's no need for that. I'm going in her place.
Ah.
A shocked Kira asks for how long as dramatic music plays, and Odo says, Nerys, it's time I rejoin the Link.
So, in some ways, evil founder woman has got exactly what she wanted.
Mm-hmm. Which is why she gave in.
She's forced Odo to return to the Great Link.
Yep.
Although, do you think she did that, or do you think Odo ultimately wanted to return and save his people?
I would say that Odo has been looking for a way back to the Link.
Yeah.
Not that he couldn't just decide to go, but he didn't have any compelling reason, right? There was no motivation for it. And now he has a true reason. One is to cure them, but I think we'll learn more about what the others are as we go.
Yeah. I do want to talk about this scene and something I think is a repeating theme.
Mm-hmm.
She brings up that the Federation will come through the Gamma Quadrant and basically conquer them. And Odo has to explain again they don't have the desire for conquest. I think this is the Dominion putting its own value systems onto other races.
Sure.
They're a brutal imperialist regime, so every other strong power must be. If somebody next door is a strong race, they must be subjugated, otherwise they'll subjugate us. For them, the Federation thinking differently is utterly alien, and maybe they see that as a point of weakness. I think it's telling about their entire mindset.
I'm going to give you a very Star Trek answer to this question, which seems appropriate in the last episode of the show.
Well, yeah, it should be Star Trek.
First of all, we don't believe that to be true about the Romulans and the Klingons. They do believe in conquest, and they would probably attack, but their fleets have been decimated, and they're, like Odo says, they're in no shape to do that.
Right.
The Star Trek answer is the Federation is something completely different, something advanced, something evolved, something that the Dominion, or the Founders, I guess in particular, have never seen before. It's something that doesn't exist in the Gamma Quadrant, which is why they don't have experience with it.
Yeah.
So it's the more evolved thing where the people don't seek conquest, they don't seek wealth, they seek knowledge.
The betterment of themselves.
Right. And that's the vision of Gene Roddenberry. So it still exists when people complain that original vision doesn't exist in Star Trek, or maybe it wasn't so much in the show because the show is so much darker than what Roddenberry maybe would have written.
Yeah.
To me, this is the Star Trek part of the story. The whole show has come to this conclusion that the Federation is different and it is more evolved.
And that's what causes them so much trouble, because they can't imagine what that would be like.
They can't understand it. They've never experienced it before. If there was a way for them to understand it, they could be such an important part of the Federation.
Right.
They really could. They currently have no ability to get it.
Well, that's where Odo comes in as the evolution of their people.
Right. Part of what I have in my overanalysis, too.
More about that later.
This is why this recording is going to take a long time. We have a lot of stuff to talk about.
It figures.
Later, Martog, Ross, and Sisko are standing in the ruins of a destroyed Cardassia. And Martog says, "This is a moment worth savoring," and he raises a toast saying, "To victory, hard fought and well earned."
I so love Martog.
Oh, God, me too. But as they are standing in the rubble of destruction and surrounded by dead bodies, no less.
There are bodies in the rubble. You can see them.
Yeah, it's not hinted at. There are actual bodies there. Sisko and Ross dump out their wine, finding the moment too distasteful to celebrate. Martog, ever the Klingon, says, "Before you waste too many tears, remember, these are Cardassians lying dead at your feet. Bajorans would call this poetic justice."
Yes, they would.
Ross and Sisko leave without another word, and Martog shakes his head, saying humans, and something in Klingon before taking a swig from a bottle.
I love this scene as well, because this is another example of the Federation is different. They're not celebrating a victory over an enemy. They seeing it as tragic. They don't want to celebrate.
And it's tragic for them, too, because they did lose, a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
But I really respected the moment in the episode because they didn't take the Klingon out of Martog and they didn't take the humanity out of the humans, right? They didn't try to make Martog understand their point of view.
Oh, yeah. They kept him perfectly Klingon.
Right.
The Klingons' view of this is, why are you idiots not celebrating? This was a great victory.
And also, it doesn't seem to soil the relationship between them.
Yeah.
It's like they each understand, okay, the humans, whatever. And the humans are like Klingons, whatever.
Yeah.
But later, they're still working together. And it's just like, if only...
Well, maybe that's the point.
The human race could be like this. And, accept the differences just within the human race and allow people to have other opinions and not want to kill each other all the time. Imagine what a different world we'd live in.
Well, that was Roddenberry's idea.
Yeah, it's a lovely idea. We're just so far from it. We're probably even farther from it than we were in the 60s, at least right now.
It feels like it at times.
Well, Bashir's in the Cardassian control room with Garrick, and Bashir says there are reports of 800 million dead. And Garrick adds that casualty reports are still coming in, so the numbers are going to rise.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's insane. I looked up how many Bajorans were killed in the occupation, and it said 15 million. I guess maybe there were more Cardassians to start with, but still, what a tremendous number of people. It's horrifying.
Oh, those are rookie numbers for the Dominion.
Yeah. Garrick asks, "Aren't you going to congratulate me, Doctor? My exile is officially over. I've returned home. Or rather, what's left of it."
Poor Garrick.
Bashir is relatively speechless for a change, so Garrick continues, "Some may say we got what we deserved. After all, we're not entirely innocent, are we? And I'm not just speaking of the Bajoran occupation. No, our history is one of arrogant aggression."
At least he recognizes that.
Yeah. He says, "Oh, there's no doubt about it. We're guilty as charged." Bashir replies, "We both know Cardassia will survive." Garrick laughs, saying, "Spare me your insufferable Federation optimism." Of course it will survive, but not as the Cardassia I knew. We had a rich and ancient culture. Our literature, music, and art were second to none. And now so much of it is lost. So many of our gifted minds.
It's great to still see, after all this, the absolute Cardassian purist in Garrick coming out.
Yeah, it's still there.
All their things were second to none.
Second to none.
Garrick is, if anything, this perfect Cardassian. The reality is different. The reality of the Cardassians are Dukat, but he is the idealized Cardassian.
Right. I always wonder why, in a situation like this, are you looking back on how we used to be so great? And I always think, okay, maybe,
possibly,
whatever, right? Probably only for a limited number of people in your civilization. But you're longing for a past that led you here to this present. So all you're doing is longing for the thing that's going to bring you right back here.
That's a very good point.
at the same time, I'll give him a break since he's basically standing in his grief.
Right.
Maybe he will reflect on it differently later, but it's like, you want to go back to a thing that led you here.
Well, he's not just standing in physical ruins. He's standing in the ruins of his ideology.
Yes, that's true. Many things have died, including that.
Yeah.
And his dad and his mom.
Possibly.
And his house.
Possibly his mom.
Yes. Well, his tone changes and he says, "You've been such a good friend. I'm going to miss our lunches together." And when Bashir replies he's sure they'll see each other again, Garrick says, "I'd like to think so, but one can never say. We live in uncertain times."
I think this also shows just how broken Garrick is as an individual. The way he turns on that happy outward appearance again at the blink of a hat, his training just kicks in, this you don't show proper emotions. It really shows how his upbringing turned him into this.
I like how you mixed your metaphor there in the blink of a hat. That was pretty funny. But because you can't completely change just on a dime. Even when something really bad happens, it takes time to evolve. So that's his natural state, is to put on that face and to pretend like everything is fine.
Oh, I look forward to our next lunch.
Right. Bad news. That's a wrap on Garrick.
Aw.
I know.
I miss him already. I think Garrick's sentiment with Bashir is true and sees him as a friend.
Definitely.
Because I think of that annoying optimism, which is so opposite of the cynicism of Garrick.
There are so many characters who have been on this show who would have looked down, and still probably do, look down on the Federation. Like even here in this scene, Garrick talks about their insufferable optimism.
Yeah.
But the impact that the individuals, like Sisko, like Kira, have had on their lives, they're not going to be able to deny going forward. So if you look at Quark, for example, and this is probably something left for notes later, but in the same way, while he has mocked the Federation, Starfleet, made fun of it, didn't want his nephew in it, he called everyone those heroic idiots in the last episode because he does believe in that heroism.
Yeah.
And I think Garrick is maybe the best example of that.
Really?
Because he, in the end, think of the missions that he went on. He didn't just sit like Quark back in his bar.
No, he actively helped them.
He went on these missions. He saw that these people were willing to sacrifice for him, and they did. They made sacrifices to help him. They risked their lives to help him in many cases, and he watched them do it for each other and do it for something better, do it for a good cause. There's no way he can deny that impact that's going to have on him overall.
Yeah.
So I feel like the team part is still having that sort of Starfleet, Star Trek impact on these people, even though they kind of continue to poke fun at this thing called the Federation.
I would agree that it's definitely true for Garrick. He would have difficulty expressing his true feelings about things, even if he wanted to at this point.
Well, think of his natural xenophobia.
Yes.
But I think it was just in the previous episode, where he was recognizing, just like Damar, that the savior of Cardassia is a Bajoran. He can't deny it because he was right next to her and he watched it.
Right, and he was working with and supporting Kira.
He can't now go tomorrow and tell himself that the Bajorans are useless. The Bajorans saved you.
Well, they're lesser people. They're people that are good for, menial work.
Sure.
I believe that was his comment.
Yes, that was his comment. Terrible. Back to the station and the signing of the formal surrender documents. Everyone is there. Kira's back in Bajoran uniform, which is a disappointment.
Oh, yeah.
She still got bad hair, though. There are also some Breen and a non-Wayun Vorta in the room. The founder signs a document and says, the war is now over. I found it quite funny that the goo woman, who doesn't care about any solids, signs a document as if that somehow means anything to her. I don't know. I just found that funny.
Right. When she is utterly untrustworthy and has been proved that she will lie to achieve anything.
What did she sign? Evil founder woman? She has no name. I mean...
I'll go along with these solids for now. That's what it says.
She signed a big X and go, yeah.
What's interesting is how she says the war's at an end. I don't think you, as the defeated party, get to decide that.
Well, that's a good point. Well, now Admiral Ross gets his turn, and he quotes General MacArthur after the surrender of Imperial Japan, which finishes with him saying, "We must move forward to preserve in peace what we won in war."
I think that was a nice touch. I mean, the Dominion War often seems to call back to World War II, so...
Probably because of the writers. As the evil founder leaves, she tells Odo, "It's up to you now," and he nods, and she is escorted away. And that's a wrap on the evil founder.
Yeah.
An amazing character, honestly. She was scary.
Probably one of the greatest villains in Star Trek, mostly because she's never really over the top.
No.
One of her most evil scenes was, as you mentioned, in part 1, you're dead, Cardassia's dead, they're all dead.
Yeah, that was so good, yeah.
Delivered calmly. Star Trek does tend to go for the slightly over-the-top villains.
And here, she's sacrificing herself to save her people. I mean, it's a noble ending for her, really. Although, I don't know that it's an ending. I have a question about that in my overanalysis.
There's some questions there.
Yeah. On the promenade, Ezri is talking to Worf about a party at Vix when Sisko, Ross, and Martog stop him. Ross asks him how he'd feel about being ambassador to Kronos, but Worf says he's not a diplomat, and Martog replies, and I'm not a politician. But sometimes fate plays cruel tricks on us. Kronos needs you, and what's more, I need you.
I feel this is Martog getting his revenge on Worf for making him Chancellor.
I thought so too. That's my note. Is this a dig at Worf for making him Chancellor? Yeah, exactly. Worf says his first loyalty is to Captain Sisko, but Sisko releases him, saying he'll probably regret that in the morning. So Worf tells Sisko it was an honor serving with him and quickly accepts Martog's offer. Martog is delighted, laughing and gripping Worf's shoulders. Excellent, he declares. An ambassador who'll go targ hunting with me. And as he walks off happily, he says, perhaps being Chancellor won't be so bad after all.
Oh, that was great. I'm guessing he's never known an ambassador who'll be like Worf, who shares basically the same cultural heritage.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm sure there never has been one.
Oh, right.
Well, farewell, Martog. That's a wrap on Martog.
Oh, well, isn't all the good characters?
The best Klingon, in my opinion, to ever grace Star Trek is Martog.
Oh, I would agree. He is perfect.
Also a wrap on Admiral Ross here. He's been with us for a couple of seasons, here and there, but off he goes.
He's going back to work for Section 31.
Good for him.
Which is his first true love.
Odo and Kira are now walking and talking, and she tells him that he could come back once he's cured his people. But Odo has bigger plans. He believes his people need him to learn what he's learned. Basically fulfilling the destiny that he was sent out on as a goo child.
Well, I think this goes back to what I've said all along. He's an evolution of his people. He is more than the founders that exist today.
Well, he says his people need to learn what he's learned while living among solids. He tells Kira it's the only way they'll ever learn to trust you. Again, a noble thing he's doing here.
You've said in the past how they need to put Odo in charge. Well,
yes.
He's taking the place of the evil founder woman, which you said for a long time. You think she's in charge of him.
Yeah.
They're all one group, but she tells them what to do.
She totally tells them what to do. Kira tells him he doesn't have to justify his decision, and she asks if she can take him back to his homeworld, and Odo says he'd like that very much. I mean, someone has to drop him off, because otherwise the runabout would stay there forever.
Plus, she does have the option of nuke the planet from orbit so there's nobody to take her boyfriend away.
She'll be the only one who knows the new location of Goo Planet, because remember, they moved.
That's true. That would be a risk. He's also trusting her.
Yep. She's pretty trustworthy.
Oh, she's extraordinarily trustworthy.
Over to Vix now, and Quark comes in saying he's there for the end of the war. Goodbye to Chief O'Brien. Goodbye to Odo. Goodbye to Worf Party.
I think he might be happy about the Worf goodbye part.
Oh, that was funny. I laughed at that.
We did get like another couple of pallies in here, I think.
Oh, great. I didn't even write it down. Well, the crew is all at the bar, and Jake asks where Miles wants to live back on Earth. Everyone throws out options, but Worf keeps suggesting Minsk over and over. People are like, Paris. Of course, Sisko says New Orleans. He's like, Minsk.
Minsk, for some reason, seems to be where Worf would live.
Yep. Must be more like Kronos.
Yeah.
Miles tells Julian he expects him to visit. Then they can take a trip to Texas and see the real Alamo. Wait, these two.
Yeah, the obsession with the Alamo. It seems unhealthy.
Are you going to take your toys to the Alamo? I bet they'd love that there.
Oh, yeah. They can take their posable action figures and play with them.
Yes.
While Molly rolls her eyes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we feature wrapped on Molly a long time ago. She's out of here. Quark tells them Earth is a rotating ball of boredom. And they'd all be better off staying here, telling them that he just doesn't like change. I can totally relate to that.
And we've seen that with Quark multiple times. Change is not his big thing.
No. Sisko's like, well, you better get used to it, Quark. Things are going to be pretty different around here now. In a very serious tone, Sisko toasts the crew, saying, to the best crew a captain ever had, no matter what the future holds, no matter how far we travel, a part of us will always remain here at the strip mall. He said Deep Space Nine. I heard strip mall.
Oh, I have not heard that in a while.
No. Vic then starts singing The Way You Look Tonight, and we get the entire song, for crying out loud, as the camera just sort of slowly goes around the room.
Yeah, they had a lot of time on that scene.
Oy. We do get a glimpse of showrunner Ira Stephen Bear at one of the tables, which I thought was very cute. I mean, it makes sense because I think he really digs the Vic character. I think that one was really important to him. I think that was all his idea. I also read that there's some other producers and writers and some of the extras out of makeup in this scene as well, but he was the one that I recognized.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
Well, you want to think at this point that the show is over. I mean, they're singing songs, they're at the bar.
Everybody's happy.
Right? Everybody's got plans, everybody's happy, but...
Kai wins with the paw race. Everybody's happy.
Remember those pesky paw races back in the fire caves?
Oh, yeah.
That's still going on.
Just leave them, they're fine. They're happy there.
And we go back there, and Winn is continuing to chant, calling for Costa Mojin to come to her. A beam of fire forms and hits her in the chest, knocking her back into the wall of the cave. And then a flame dances over Dukat, entering his body. And unfortunately, Dukat opens his eyes, which are now glowing red. And we just cannot get rid of this guy. Ugh.
He has joined the dark side of the Force. Isn't that what happens to Anakin?
Winn is stunned, and we now see that Dukat has been transformed back into a Cardassian. You know what? I didn't notice that the first time I watched it.
Oh!
I forgot he was a Bajoran.
Oh!
Anyway, he's now back to being a Cardassian, complete with god-awful hair.
You're back to that excellent Cardassian hair.
Yeah. Winn cries, no, which I'm pretty sure that was just about the hair. Meanwhile, back in Vic, Sisko and Cassidy are dancing when Sisko suddenly stops and he says, I understand now what I have to do, what I was meant to do. He tells her he has to go to the fire caves on Bajor. She says they can go together, but in bad news, he says he must do it alone.
So did he get a vision here?
I don't know. They didn't show it, certainly. I mean, maybe it got cut, but
yeah.
I don't think so because of how it goes later when he has a vision. I think he just had a feeling or a realization that he needed to go there. A moment of clarity, perhaps.
Oh, leftovers from his near godlike state.
Mm-hmm. In the fire caves, Dukat is kneeling on the ledge, laughing manically. And just to add insult to injury, he asks Winn if she really thought the PA race would choose her as their emissary.
Oh, that was so good.
And yes, she did.
Yeah. Oh, she was completely suckered.
Completely. But it seems like maybe the emissaries are not Bajorans.
Oh, I didn't consider that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true, both of them.
Laughing and fully evil now, he says, soon the PA race will burn across Bajor, the Celestial Temple, the Alpha Quadrant. Can you picture it? An entire universe set in flames, to burn for all eternity.
Do you want some over-analysis here?
Okay.
This is a callback to Dramatis Personae. Those data tapes were the history of the prophets. Remember his last line? My name will burn across the stars. This was the history of whatever race became the prophets.
As soon as you said, do you want some overanalysis, I knew that's what you were going to say. I mean, I'm not saying I thought of it before that moment. I didn't, but something told me that's where you were going. I mean, what an amazing headcanon overanalysis point. I don't think I've seen that anywhere else, but there is a connection.
Yeah.
I thought it was all connected to Blade Runner, you know, that crazy line from Blade Runner.
Oh.
But no, that makes a lot of sense, as crazy as that is.
It's the story of a struggle of a corrupt king or leader, the machinations within the palace, and a revolt and an overthrow. And I think this line from Dukat ties it back. That's
amazing. I think there's definitely a chance that that's correct. I was wondering here at this point, did Kai Winn start to think, oh, maybe these aren't the true gods of Bajor. Maybe they are evil. What have I done?
Well, I could see how this might shake your faith in the PA race.
A little bit, yeah. Now Dukat sees Sisko approaching with a phaser rifle, and he says, the prophets have sent me a gift. Their beloved emissary sent forth like an avenging angel, sent to slay a demon. Mark Alimo, he's lived for this moment, I think, for 7 years.
Completely. I've always thought Alimo really scarily managed to make Dukat a real person. He is just living it in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Sisko says, I should have known the demon would be you. Yes, you should have. You had your chance to kill this guy multiple times, so really this is all your fault.
Yeah, let's talk about Waltz. I mean, when you got him on the ground, you kept on hitting until the stuffing came out. This is all Sisko's fault, let's face it.
It's like the elf in Lord of the Rings. That guy could have stopped the whole thing if he had just thrown the guy with the ring into the volcano at the beginning.
Yeah. I'm keeping it. No, I'm throwing you into the volcano.
Yeah. Dukat, still standing on the ledge, goads Sisko, saying, "Kill me if you can." But when he raises the phaser rifle, Dukat just lifts his hand and the rifle flies out of Sisko's grasp. And then he waves his hand again and knocks Sisko to the ground without touching him.
This kind of power with Dukat
is very dangerous.
Really bad idea. Yeah. This is what he's always wanted.
Yeah. Sisko gets up and tries punching Dukat, but that has no impact.
Oh, yeah.
Although if you read the Memory Alpha notes about the show, it says that in this scene, Avery Brooks accidentally punched Mark Alaimo for real. Dukat says, "Now bow to me," and he uses his new powers to force Sisko to his knees. Sisko calls him pathetic, saying, "First the Dominion, now the Paw Wraiths. You have a talent for picking the losing side."
Oh, that was such a great burn.
So good.
Dukat is pathetic. He picks the losers. It's always about Dukat as well.
Mm-hmm. Dukat says it's time to resolve our differences and face the ultimate truth. "I've won, Benjamin. You've lost." I mean, is that really what this is about? Apparently so.
Well, Dukat's such a small man.
Yeah.
Trying to be something.
Sisko replies the Paw Wraiths are not going to conquer anything, and a smug Dukat asks, "And who's going to stop us?" When Sisko shouts, "I am," Dukat just laughs, saying, "You can't even stand up."
Fair point.
Meanwhile, Winn says, "Well, then I'll do it." And she raises the book of Kostamogen to throw into the flames, but it disappears from her hands before she can do anything. And again, perhaps you should have just quietly tossed it into the flames before making an announcement. Oy, people never learn.
Yeah, sometimes monologuing before you do things is a bad idea.
You just throw it in and then go, ha-ha!
We didn't see, probably because of the effects budget, did he just pull the book to him, or do you think he, transported it somehow?
He pulled it, I think.
Yeah.
I think they were out of budget at this point.
I was wondering what the limits of his power are.
Yeah. Well, now Dukat says, "Are you still here?" I mean, that's the worst. That's the worst burn that Winn has had to endure on this entire show.
Well, she sees herself as so important and believes herself the main character in everything. So that is just the perfect burn to get her. Oh, you're irrelevant.
I mean, she built a life of hypocrisy, yes.
Yes.
But she gave up her life entirely for this moment, and then she's just cast aside like nothing. That stings.
Yeah.
Winn shouts to Sisko, "Emissary, the book." But then sadly, Dukat holds up his hand again and flames circle around Winn, and she's consumed by fire. No.
Well, she got her just desserts.
That's a wrap on Kai Winn. Just one of the greatest villains in Trek history.
And long shall we mourn her passing.
Sisko seizes this moment and rushes at Dukat, grabbing him, and they both fly off the ledge along with the book into the flames. We get an effect shot of Sisko and Dukat falling through the flames with Dukat holding the book. Dukat appears to fall further into the flames, and the book first and then Dukat are just consumed by the flames, and Dukat cries out. And finally, I can say, that's a wrap on Dukat. And Kim cheers. Woo!
Yes.
That guy. And it took all the way until there was 15 minutes left in the entire show.
I did warn you would see a lot more Dukat.
You did. Sisko appears to stop falling, and then suddenly he's in a vision, surrounded by white light, like his very first vision back in episode 1 of season 1.
Yep.
And we hear the heartbeat we also heard in episode 1.
Right.
And Sisko calls for Sarah, and she appears, saying, "The emissary has completed his task. You've returned the Paw Wraiths to their prison in the fire caves." Sisko asks if the book was the key, and she says, "To a door that can never be opened again."
Awesome.
I mean, couldn't they have just told him that a long time ago and he just got the book and threw it in the fire? This seemed like a very elaborate way to destroy a book that could have been burned up in season 1.
Yeah, just check it out in the library, set fire to it.
Yeah. Sisko asks about Dukat, and Sarah tells him he's where he belongs with the Paw Wraiths, which is an interesting phrase, where he belongs.
And I will point out, you did ask me a long time ago if Dukat dies, and I said, well, no, because strictly speaking, he's now with the Paw Wraiths.
Right, he's imprisoned with the Paw Wraiths.
Yeah.
Sarah continues saying, "Your time of trial has ended. You need to rest." He wants to return to the station, but she tells him, "That won't be necessary. You're with us now." And that's a wrap on Sarah Sisko and those confusing prophets. On DS9, Esri and Worf inform Cassidy that they found Sisko's runabout, but there is no sign of the captain in the fire caves. Odo tells Jake that they're not calling off the search until they find him, though they've scanned the entire planet and there's no sign of him. Cassidy tells them she can feel that something bad has happened. She says the prophets warned us. And just like that, she's pulled into a vision of white light where you can hear the heartbeat again.
Yeah.
Sisko appears and tells her they're in the celestial temple. She wants him to come home, of course, but he says he can't. She asks if this is the sorrow. Ugh. He tells her it's difficult to explain. His life and his destiny are not linear. He is the prophet's emissary, and there's still a great deal for him to do. But first, there's much to learn. Things only the prophets can teach him.
That is the most interesting part here. Sisko's life is not linear. So, does that mean Sisko can appear anywhere in time when the prophets want him to?
Mm-hmm. I would think so. Cassidy asks when he'll be back, and unfortunately, he doesn't know. It's hard to say. Maybe a year. Maybe yesterday. But I will be back. And Cassidy says, and I'll be waiting. And that is a wrap on Benjamin Sisko.
I find that kind of awful, that he's asking her to wait.
I agree. It is awful. I'm confused about, he says that there's much to do, but just in the previous scene, Sarah said there wasn't anything left for him to do, and now he's supposed to rest. We've kind of changed the story all of a sudden.
Again, this might be the prophets with the non-linear.
Oh, I don't know. But I like how he said he might return yesterday. I thought that was funny.
That was strange. But then again, they brought a quorum back from the dead, so...
That's true. Did you read the story on Memory Alpha about this scene?
I did not.
So this is just straight from Memory Alpha. I guess take it with a grain of salt if you don't believe the things that are on there.
Yeah.
But it says, originally the episode was to end without any ambiguity as to whether or not Sisko was going to return to his corporeal life. The answer was a definite no. The idea was that Sisko had become a prophet, and that was how it would remain for all time, thus confirming the Sarah prophet's warning in Penumbra and Till Death Do Us Part, that if he married Cassidy, he would know nothing but sorrow.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds a lot worse for Cassidy.
Right. And so the final scene between Sisko and Cassidy was shot this way, with Sisko telling Cassidy he would never be back. But a day or two after the shoot, Avery Brooks called Ira Bear and told him he wasn't happy with the scene. He felt that having a black man leave his pregnant wife to raise their child alone carried certain negative connotations that he wasn't comfortable with.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then they quote somebody called Terry Erdman from The Companion in the 24th Century, that the situation conveyed only sorrow. However, in the 21st century, there was a secondary social issue that had particular resonance. As such, the scene was rewritten and reshot to clarify that Sisko might return someday.
Yeah.
Thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
Now we go back to the station and Cassidy's vision ends and she tells Jake, I was talking to your father. But that's all we get to hear. We don't get to hear what she tells him.
Yeah.
Hopefully she was able to comfort Jake about this.
Well, I hope so, because remember, a previous iteration of Jake dedicated his entire life to getting his father back when he was stuck in subspace.
Yes, of course. I remember that.
So I hope she tells Jake about it.
Yeah, I would hope she explains the thing to him so that he doesn't do that again. Now Miles takes one last look around his quarters and finds the missing toy he thought Julian lost, and he smiles. And then we have a sentimental montage of Julian and Miles throughout the years.
Yep.
And then it's time for Worf's montage as he gets ready to leave with Martog. And there's not one image of Jadzia, which is incredibly insulting.
Who was that?
Yes. Before Worf leaves the station, he looks up to see Ezri waving goodbye. Now we go to Odo's quarters, and Odo gives Kira his bucket, and she laughs. And then we get their flashback montage.
The one good relationship on the show.
Yeah. Well, all this is very cute. There were two things that I thought the second time I watched it.
Yeah.
One, in this flashback, we're pleasantly reminded of some of Kira's best haircuts. That was one thing that went through my mind.
You're really not letting that go, are you?
No. But also, while Odo's entire story was about loving Kira,
yes,
her entire story was not about loving him. So I felt like she got short shrift in the wrap-up.
Oh, in what way?
Because really, they've only been a thing where she's been part of it for this season.
Yeah.
There were 6 other seasons, but she got no other montage. It was only with Odo.
Well, that's the only important part.
Off to Quark's, and his flashback montage ends with the awesome bada bing, bada bang slow motion group shot of the crew looking sharp. That was great.
Oh, definitely.
That was a great thing to bring back. In Cassidy's quarters, Jake's looking at Sisko's little dollhouse, and he has his flashback montage, which includes a scene from The Visitor. Thank you very much for making me cry.
How does he remember The Visitor?
That's a really good question. When we were watching the episode, you also said, and Worf remembers himself in a holosuite program that wasn't actually him.
Right, it was just storing their images.
But somehow it's in his montage.
How did he remember that?
Yeah. Jake puts the roof back on his dad's dream house and he kind of smiles, but his look is also one of concern.
Yep.
Seems like this is a great opportunity for Jake to go to Bajor and build that house on the land that his dad bought.
Only if he changes from that thatched roof. It's going to burn down in fire season.
The thatch roof, I think, it's just for the model. Because it's easy to get off and on.
Yeah.
It's easier to store. Kira and Odo are leaving to head to Goo Planet, and Odo hasn't said goodbye to anyone. He tells Kira, if they don't know how I feel about them now, a few parting words won't make a difference.
It's perfectly on character for Odo.
Well, also, it's like a true introvert. That's completely what an introvert would think. But Quark's figured out Odo is trying to sneak off, and he appears, asking Odo if there's anything he'd like to say to him, like, goodbye, you certainly were a worthy adversary. Odo just says, no, I have nothing I want to say to you.
That was great.
Quark can't believe after all of their years together, he's not even going to say goodbye. And Odo says, that's right. And he turns and heads toward the runabout, giving one last scoff in Quark's direction.
Perfectly done.
Kira tries to make Quark feel better, but Quark says, that man loves me. It was written all over his back. Man, Quark is funny in this episode.
Yes.
And he toasts his champagne glass in Odo's direction.
Some of Quark's best work.
Absolutely. Miles and Julian are now parting ways, and in a scene without any dialogue, they just hug each other and Miles heads into the airlock. I've seen that hug many times in internet memes.
Yeah.
Off we go to Goo Planet, which we seem to get to extremely quickly. Goo Lake is looking very unhealthy, sort of brown and green.
Yeah, looks like a badly polluted lake.
Yeah. Kira and Odo look around at the lake, and Odo says they're dying. Kira tells him he'd better get to it then. Odo says to tell the others he'll miss them, even Quark. And then they kiss very sweetly, and Odo turns his uniform into a tuxedo, saying, you always said I looked good in a tuxedo. He wants this to be how she remembers him, and she says she'll never forget him. Holding her hand, he says, goodbye, Nerys, and then he walks into Goo Lake. As he slowly dissolves into the lake, we see Odo's golden color start spreading across the Great Link.
Until the whole lake's back to that golden color.
And that's a wrap on Odo.
Oh.
Yeah. Back to the station, and I guess to the new normal. Nog brings in the duty roster to Kira in her new office. It's taken a while, but she finally gets the office back.
Yeah, she finally got the office back. It's taken 7 seasons, and now she's like, yeah, I got my office back. All she ever wanted.
Nog has been promoted to lieutenant, and Kira says she's sure Sisko was very proud of him. Nog leaves, and that's a wrap on Nog. Kira grabs Sisko's baseball and walks out into ops, looking around at the new crew. She flips the ball up in the air and catches it.
Just like Sisko would.
And now we wrap up on Ezri and Julian. They're chatting about Ezri wanting to play the Alamo game in the holosuites, but Julian says that's a game only he and Miles can play. But he does suggest another hopeless battle, the Battle of Thermopylae, and he describes it as a 2-day heroic struggle against a vast army. And Ezri says, until they're all wiped out. And then she asks if he's ever talked to a counselor about these annihilation fantasies. For some reason, Ezri's face was blurred in the scene. It's strange.
Soft focus.
Yeah, something funny going on. But just her, not Julian. It was, yeah, it was strange. Well, that's a wrap on those two. And now in Quark's, we see Morn at the bar, and Quark is selling him some blue stuff that is guaranteed to grow hair within a week. Kira comes in holding a data pad, asking Quark to explain it, and Quark admits he's running a pool on who's going to be the next Kai, saying it's a wide open field.
Perfectly appropriate for Quark.
Oh, that's funny. Do they know what happened? Because she just burned up and disappeared. Or did she just not come to work and they're like, oh, guess we better get a new one. Oh, let's get Solbor. Oh, what's happened to him?
That's a very good point. Plus, wouldn't anybody ask about what happened to the book?
Yeah.
The Book of Customogen?
Where's the book?
Where's the
Kai? Where's that guy who was pretending to be a Bajoran?
Anybody seen Solbor at the same time?
Maybe somebody got a vision.
Oh.
But yeah, it's a good question. Well, Kira says betting pools are illegal on the station, and if she finds someone running a pool, she's putting Quark in a holding cell for 15 days. Quark is sort of amused, but he's like, fine. And then he walks back to Morn and he says, like I said, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And somehow, Quark has the last line in this episode.
Really?
Not the captain, because the captain's gone.
No, right.
It's Quark.
He does.
The show's not yet over, but there's no more dialogue.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
From Kira walking out of the bar, the camera pans up to Jake on the upper level of the promenade, watching the wormhole open and going, Dad?
He's working on the plan that will take 60 years for him to get into the temple to see his dad.
Kira comes up behind him, putting her hand on his shoulder as they both watch the wormhole. And we get a fly out from the window and away from the station as it fades to a dot in the distance. The end of everything.
Until DS9, the next generation.
Well, I almost hesitate to ask if you have any over-analysis.
I have a couple of points.
Okay.
So, does this mean Sisko is a prophet? Sarah was a prophet? Do the genetics work like that?
Well, I mean, if genetics work like that, then we got to ask, is Jake next? And also the new baby.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
But also, is Sisko dead? Because his corporeal form was dropping in that cave.
Yeah.
And when the prophets have come back, they've taken over a different body.
Yeah.
So is he a prophet? And if so, then he's not going to come back as Sisko. He's going to come back as something else.
Right. Well, they took a quorum into the temple, and they took the Nagus into the temple as well. So in theory, they could have his body there, his actual corporeal body.
Okay. But those things happened in the Celestial Temple or in the wormhole, right?
Yeah.
This didn't. But maybe they're able to pull him in there.
They are pretty powerful.
Because they very specifically didn't show him burning up.
Yeah.
Like they did Dukat. Yeah.
Dukat definitely did.
His body's gone. There's probably prophecies now written about Dukat. He's the new Coast-Emojan. It's Dukat. I think they want us to believe that he's a prophet.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No. I think he's the interface, the halfway between corporeal beings and prophets. For whatever reason, the prophets have identified that they need a corporeal presence. And Sisko is that corporeal presence. They can't completely influence events as they are.
Right.
Like with what's happened with Dukat and the Cost-Emojan, so they need someone for that role. He could be half prophet or part prophet, but he's something else. And I think this follows a trend in the show of Odo.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say.
He's a changeling, but he's more than just what the rest of the changelings are. And I think this applies to Sisko as well. He's human, but he's human plus.
Human plus. Yeah, I was going to say that as you were talking there, that it's similar to the story of Odo.
Yeah.
Because the prophets can't understand a corporeal existence.
Yeah.
Except Sarah can, because she did it briefly. But Sisko did it for a lifetime, a short lifetime.
Yeah.
So he can bring that to them. And in the same way, the founders have no ability to understand the solids because they weren't able to live successfully among them.
Right.
And Odo brings that to them.
Right, exactly. In terms of the story as well, I think it works better if he's not a prophet.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's a prophet.
So that's 2 votes for not a prophet.
2 votes for not a prophet. I'm sure we'll hear otherwise from our listeners. But yeah, I agree.
Next thing, Kai Winn.
Oh, yeah.
So what happened to Kai Winn? Is she stuck with the Par Wraiths too, or did they just kill her?
I think they just killed her. I think she was a pawn, and they didn't need her.
I honestly don't know. I think you're probably right, but at the same time, I think maybe she's part of this as well.
I think she fulfilled what they needed her to fulfill. Her part in the game was essentially to get Dukat there and to release the Power Wraiths.
Yeah.
She did that. They were done with her.
Okay.
It's a better long-term story if she's also stuck in the fire caves and she could come out later. But 2, her corporeal form is also gone, like Dukat's.
I see your point that maybe she was just an implement for Dukat's ascension. Okay.
Well, was this Kai Winn's destined role all along to be sacrificed in this cave? Well, if she was destined to do this, was it the Pa Wraiths pulling at the strings?
Yeah.
Or was it the prophets pulling at the strings because that's just her destiny? Did the prophets not talk to her ever because the Pa Wraiths prevented it?
Yeah.
Or did the prophets just not talk to her because they knew eventually she would be on the Pa Wraith side, so there was no point in talking to her? But if they had talked to her, maybe she wouldn't have felt like she'd lived a life of hypocrisy. So there's so many complicated things at play here. Was somebody actually pulling her strings the entire time? Were they purposely not talking to her to lead her to this, because this was her destiny, was to get here?
I'm going to give you my view of this. This was all done by her choice. She was given enough opportunities in her lifetime, including the warning by Kira telling her what to do.
Yeah.
That she could have chosen a different path. And remember, the prophets have this problem of they see the ultimate outcomes. So they don't, if you like, need to make things happen. They know how they're happening. Okay, with Sisko, they change things, but I'll let the Sisko one go. I think with Winn, because I want it to be, Winn was not following a path. She was making her own very bad choices.
That's interesting. Because certainly you could manipulate the story enough to say that the prophets created her hypocrisy so that she would get to this point, so that they would have the opportunity to lock up the power wraiths forever.
Right.
But it's also, when you look at the many times Kira would explain to someone, to Odo usually, that faith wasn't about seeing something, like seeing the proof of something.
Yeah.
It was just a thing that you needed to have, and she always had it.
Yeah.
So you're right. If you look at it that way, then Winn got there by all of her own choices, because she didn't have enough faith, even though she wasn't getting visions. The prophets weren't talking to her.
Right.
She didn't feel anything. But it's hard for me to believe that you can just make a choice to be a bad person.
Well, the thing is, because the alternative is, if she was destined to do all of these things, and like you said, someone was pulling all the strings, she was predestined by the players in this to do it, then she's a victim. She's not an evil character. She's just a character that was manipulated and used by these godlike creatures. And that makes Winn absolutely tragic, not an evil person.
That, when I was watching these scenes, both times, because I watched the whole thing twice,
right?
That's what I thought. I thought, wow, they manipulated everything to get her here. Mm-hmm. They stopped her from having visions. They basically turned her into the hypocrite that she was, the hypocrisy that she needed in order to make this choice at the end. So I really felt that all of this, especially once Dukat started manipulating her, that all of this was someone else setting her on a path and making this happen.
Yeah.
That is what I felt about it as I watched it, so I'm going to stick with that.
Interesting.
That's where my gut went.
Yeah. I don't want it to be, because it makes her a better character if she's making evil choices.
If she's just nasty.
On her own, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think Sisko is a pretty good character, even though his destiny was preset as well.
Yeah.
He tried to make some choices that they didn't like. But...
Well, and Sisko's made choices that they didn't like, and one of them got Jadzia killed, and the other one has separated him from Cassidy.
But he had the advantage of knowing those things.
Yeah.
So
he was aware of it.
He didn't want to have faith in the prophets, but over time, because they kept talking to him and they kept proving their existence to him, he was able to have the faith. Winn never had that.
You're right.
Because the power race wanted her for something else.
They were guiding her life in a negative direction.
In the same way we could do a whole episode on the arc of Garrick, we could do a whole episode on the arc of Winn.
Oh, I think so. She's such a great character.
And just acted so beautifully. I mean, Louise Fletcher, hats off to you.
Agreed. Next thing.
Yeah.
Dukat. Is he really the emissary of the power wraiths in the same way that Sisko was? Is his destiny, has his life been manipulated by the power wraiths? Do we find Dukat's mother or father was a power wraith?
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Or is it just a case of Dukat is so filled with just hatred for Sisko that he wants to call himself the emissary of the power wraiths, but really he's just a tool of Costamogen, or maybe he's actually a power wraith himself.
Wow. I didn't think about maybe his mother or father was a power wraith. That's funny.
Well, look at Keiko. We've seen that.
Yeah. I was wondering, kind of along the same line, did the power wraiths bring Dukat and the Cardassians to Bajor?
Oh, to make them suffer. Yeah.
Well, and throughout this whole show, we have talked about Dukat being obsessed with Bajor.
Yeah.
And the women of Bajor in particular, which is his own creepy thing, young women. But if this, again, was actually his destiny, that this was what was going to happen, or, maybe he just was a power wraith, because Sarah says he's where he belongs.
Right. And that, I think, is the telling part.
Oh my God, maybe he was a power wraith the whole time.
I'm thinking there was some connection to him and the power wraiths. That was more than just he was using them so he would get powerful.
I mean, that blows my mind. You blew my mind when you suggested that the voices in his head were the power wraiths. And
I think there's more to Dukat than just he's
just gross.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if I follow from the path of Winn being a pawn in the power race and the prophets game, and that her destiny was sort of foretold, then yes, He is either the emissary or he was already a Pa Wraith. And this was also his destiny. So if I'm going to have one, I have to have the other.
Oh, okay. I'm going to throw something else out then with Winn. It didn't have to be Winn. It was just whoever made the wrong choices.
I think it had to be Winn.
Really?
Because she wasn't having any contact with the prophets and the other Kais had been. I think it had to be her.
I think maybe there are other people who would fill that position and are hypocrites within the Bajoran faith.
Maybe.
Yeah, the cult of the Pa Wraiths.
It is possible that there was just a prophecy that would lead to this happening, and it just required, there would be a person who
embraced the Pa Wraiths in this way and could read the book.
Yeah. There was a person in the right position.
Yeah.
Who didn't have any faith.
And it didn't have to be Winn.
No, it could have been anywhere in time.
Yes.
It just happened to be her.
Yeah, and she made the wrong choices.
But she could still be, that existence of that person could still have been foretold in a prophecy.
Yeah.
But I just think about when Sarah told Sisko, the things about, why did you take over my mother? And she's like, well, it had to be her.
Yeah.
Because you had to be born and this had to happen. And so that's why I take that a step further and say, well, then it had to be Winn.
Well, this is where I come down to the prophets of they were interfering in something that happened already. They could see time and see Sisko being born, and they just went, oh, well, we need to make sure this happens correctly. So it's sort of their interference.
Yeah.
Because they don't really understand time. And I think this is where maybe this is a parallel with Odo. Remember his people, they just want to bring order, make sure everything is run smoothly and there isn't chaos. Maybe the prophets suffer from a similar thing.
Yeah.
And this is what Sisko is teaching them, that you don't manipulate events, you don't manipulate people.
Yeah. It is interesting to look at it like that. Sisko was the baby they sent out, and Odo was the baby the founder sent out.
Right.
Yeah. I was really struck by Winn being sort of tossed aside like garbage. That really irritates me.
Yeah.
Because I loved her so much. And it's annoying that was the woman character that they did that to.
Yeah.
So I guess I want her to be more important. I want her to be part of the story.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what's driving me.
Yeah.
That might be my own motivation.
Okay. Next thing.
Yeah.
Sticking with the theme. Now, Winn sacrificed Dukat to the Pa Wraiths. Was this a misstep by Winn because it was the person who was prepared to sacrifice or be sacrificed was the one who would get the power? If she'd drunk the good poisoned wine, she would have got the power.
Yeah, I did think that.
Yeah.
Like she made a mistake doing that. Like
Right.
You were supposed to make a sacrifice, but again, you made this selfish choice. And
so it backfired on her.
Or it's just the patriarchy. It's one of the two things.
Oh, the Cardassian patriarchy. Okay.
The Pa Wraith patriarchy. That is an excellent question. I think that's a really smart question because it makes perfect sense that if she had been the one willing to make the sacrifice, and she was never the one willing to make the sacrifice.
Exactly.
Ever. Time and time again, She wouldn't make the sacrifice.
She was prepared to sacrifice other people for it.
Dang, you're just chipping away at my whole image that I'm trying to be left with, and you're just crushing it.
I think it makes her just a fantastic villain.
So good. Because again, I would do anything for you, Coast Emojin. Oh, but I won't do that.
Yeah. I'll do anything to make this right. Oh, I won't give up.
I won't do that. That's just one step too far.
Okay, maybe some observations now. The Plague of Locusts, Sisko's prophecy, where Sisko has the vision of the sky filled with locusts who descend on Cardassia and devour it. Wow, is that not a great callback to what happens in this episode?
I thought the Plague of Locusts were the Jem'Hadar when they first came through the wormhole and were going to Bajor.
Yeah, and look what happened to Cardassia, because they leave Bajor because the sky was filled with them.
I see. And they ruined that one instead. Gotcha, yeah. Well, that's good.
Well, I think with that actually wraps up my overanalysis. Over to you, Kim.
Oh, I have so many questions.
Go.
Did Odo break his word to Sisko by linking with the founder?
He did not.
Why?
Because this was a very specific instance where he was actually trying to save lives.
He asked for permission to talk to her. He didn't ask for permission to link with her and cure her. But that's what he did.
That's a good point. But he didn't take matters into his own hands.
Yeah, he did.
Really?
He negotiated the end of the war, basically. I'm not saying the outcome was bad. I'm just asking, was that him breaking his promise?
No, they let him talk to the founder. So I think at that point, you're putting things into Odo's hands to make the best calls that he can in that situation. I think if you'd said, okay, Odo, you can go and talk to her, but don't link with her and don't give her the cure. You would have to call that out specifically, because if you're letting Odo negotiate with her, then you're leaving that up to Odo.
Okay.
I'm going to say he didn't.
I will agree. You know how we can now look at Kira as the savior of what's left of Cardassia?
Yeah.
You can also sort of say Odo, who maybe became a bit disillusioned with the Federation when he learned that they were trying to wipe his people out, he saved the Federation.
We certainly saved a large part of it.
Well, he ended the war,
Yep.
which is good. And hopefully what he's done is he's brought the sensibilities of the Federation back to the founders.
Yes.
He might change everything with that. It's just interesting.
Well, he's brought that moral code he lives by, which is not killing people, not treating people differently, to the founders.
And he sees that Starfleet believes in that too, just by him trying to tell the evil woman that they don't seek conquest.
And I think what's important is maybe Odo sees that they are imperfect, but they're better than the alternatives. And they're striving to be better.
Oh, yeah.
And there are at least people in the Federation who try to live up to the ideals.
Definitely. Next question.
Go.
Will Damar be known as the greatest hero in Cardassian history?
He will definitely be a legend. I think the story will probably grow to legendary proportions.
Yeah.
It would become yes, Kira and Garrick made it to the control room. But Damar, fought the entire garrison on his own before, wounded hundreds of times, he was finally brought down.
Eventually, the story will be that he did get there on his own.
Yeah.
But I mean, he also helped bring the Dominion in and then just sort of let them do whatever they wanted for a long time, too. Are they going to forget about that?
Considering the death toll and the damage done to Cardassia, I could see people wanting a heroic character to help them through these times. And Damar could become that hero. So I'd say the likelihood is yes. Some of it would depend on what happens to Cardassian society. If they remain naturally xenophobic, then they're going to want to downplay the role everybody else played.
Oh, yeah, good point.
A Bajoran and a Cardassian spy fought their way to the command center. Oh, yeah, we'll leave out the Bajoran.
Yeah, as long as the Kira part doesn't get lost, it might actually help with their ridiculous xenophobia.
Yeah.
All right, my next point was about Sisko being dead. We already talked about that. We don't think he is.
No.
Next question. Did Kai Winn change sides at the end with the book, or did she just hate Dukat and wanted him dead?
I think if we follow Kai Winn's character, she is an opportunist. She wants to be on the winning side. She's just a turncoat and was like, I'm going with Sisko. There wasn't a redemption arc for her. She only did this because she didn't get her way.
I mean, there wasn't time for a redemption arc, but it seems like it could be one of two things. One, she's just really mad at Dukat because he was a total jerk to her there. And she had the realization that she was a pawn and useless.
Yep.
But on the other hand, he made that speech about the universe being on fire. Won't it be great? And she may have gone, oops.
That would be one of the biggest oopses in Bajoran history.
Yes, but it's possible.
Yeah.
So
my point would be, she was all on board on this when she was the one going to be in charge.
Yeah, she was like, I give myself to Kostomogen fully, right?
Yeah.
She was all like that, yeah. When she thought she would be the emissary.
Right, and remember when all the unbelievers, people who didn't embrace the power race, would be burned away.
Okay.
I think it was just regret in that moment for, oops.
Well, my next thing was about, did the power race bring Dukat and the Cardassians to Beja? We talked about that.
I think that's a really interesting take.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Because they seem to really hate the Bajorans.
Well, yes, that's one thing. That's one reason why they could have done it, but they also could have done it because they needed to get their emissary there.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Get Dukat on the path.
Like, did Benjamin Sisko really pick Deep Space Nine? I don't think so. I think the prophets picked Deep Space Nine for him. Does the founder get life in prison? And what does that mean when you live forever?
Well, she gets limited things to change into.
Does she eventually get back to her people? like after 1,000 years or something?
Well, that would be the question. This is another side, I think. This is the huge Star Trek side, the best side.
Yeah.
The founders have been involved in this Dominion War. They're awful people.
Mm-hmm.
And the Federation's take is, okay, it's over now. We finished this. This is the person who is responsible. We move on. She'll be held accountable. We're not going to judge the entire race, and we're not going to commit genocide against them or hold the whole race accountable.
No. And they're not going to kill her either because they don't have the death penalty. But
yeah.
I guess what I'm asking is if they, for war crimes and all the terrible things she's done, if they're going to like commit her to life in prison, what does that mean? Does it mean thousands and thousands and thousands of years until she actually dies?
Yeah.
Or does it mean they have to set a date because they don't know the length of her life? And so then after 1,000 years, they let her go and now she rejoins the link. And now what? Because she's still going to be stuck in the past. She won't have grown and learned. So what does that really mean? Keeping her out of the Great Link while Odo is trying to advance them.
One possible is she's kept out of the link until Odo asks for her back.
Oh, that's interesting. Once he does the hard work, maybe.
Yeah. Once the founders are reformed, once their founders become, in the Star Trek terms, what they could be, then whatever she believes would be almost irrelevant. And maybe she is the problem. Maybe she is the leader. Maybe she is the one who continues this same view amongst the changelings for all eternity.
That's possible.
So she's the one being crushing the ideas, stopping the founders from evolving.
That I think is entirely possible, yeah. But it's also then, if that's possible, then it's also possible that some of the things in the Great Link could still be waiting for her to return. They'll never change until she comes back. They'll never get on the side of Odo. If they were normal people, that's what would happen. There would still be people following her.
They're waiting for Napoleon to return.
Yeah.
I think keep her locked up until Odo asks.
Next question.
Go.
Does Laz just die somewhere out in the ether?
Oh, God, I hope so.
Or does he find his way back? Oh. Okay.
I wonder if Laz will find his way back. I mean, he did like to change a lot. So if that virus...
Oh, that's true. He may have just
speeds
died,
up the more he changes. I mean, he was pure founder.
Next question. What about the baby and what about Jake? Because we didn't even mention the baby in this episode.
I'm worried about Jake and his obsessive past.
I am a little worried about Jake, yeah.
Is he going to devote his life now to getting into the temple and seeing his father? And is the baby a prophet?
Yeah. I was wondering, too, if Sisko's a prophet, does he turn into one of the jerky prophets, right? Where he's watching Cassidy and every time she does something he doesn't like, he like pops into a vision with her and he's like, I told you not to do that. Or more confusing things like, this is not your path or whatever.
No, I think Sisko is the interface.
All right.
The bridge between the corporeal and the eternal.
I have some other comments that are maybe more related to rating, but
okay.
My last extremely complicated question is, what happens to Garrick from here? Is he going to somehow lead Cardassia? Or is he just going to try to pick up the rebel of his own life and go on?
That's a good question. I've never seen Garrick as a politician.
Yeah. But again, he's seen all those great examples from the people in Starfleet and Kira.
As much as I love Garrick, I would worry Garrick would want the Cardassia of the books and would want that idealized, naturally xenophobic Cardassia, that he would not be a good role model or leader. I think there's too much baggage with him.
Yeah.
Maybe in the short term, he is someone who would be useful for organizing and being able to run things because he does seem to be able to do that.
He's very smart.
Yeah.
Maybe he becomes a bitter old man sitting on his porch. Get off my lawn.
Okay, let's throw out an idea. I hope he would become some kind of cultural steward for Cardassia because he said about all the things that they've lost and he did seem to appreciate them. So perhaps a good role for Garrick would be preserving elements of Cardassian culture. Not the negative ones, but the positive things.
That would be a good job for him.
Or maybe even preserve the negative ones just to warn people of the future. Our trials used to basically be show trials.
I mean, that's an incredible thought. Your brain works in mysterious ways. I mean, I never would have come up with that. That's kind of genius. I like it.
It would give something positive for Garrick to do.
Yeah.
Rather than setting up a new spy network.
But he could turn into like the person who goes through the galaxy looking for antiquities.
Oh,
of Cardassia.
yeah.
He could turn into an anthropologist.
Try and restore something of that what they've lost.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's brilliant. Okay. All right. Some of my other comments that are maybe more about rating than they are about overanalysis, but
Okay.
Kira and Quark, they're in the same place at the end of the series that they are at the beginning.
Which is entirely Quark's comment.
Right. The more things change, the more they stay the same. But neither is the same person.
Yes.
Both of them have been irrevocably influenced by the Starfleet people that they were surrounded by.
Yeah.
And it can't not change you.
Right.
So I just find that super interesting.
Quark is resistant to change, though.
No, I don't agree. I think he changes slightly. Like if we go back, and we intend to, right? We intend to go back and watch the first episode and listen to our first podcast just to sort of rebinge ourselves.
Yeah.
But if we go back to that, I think we will see differences.
Okay.
Between Quark at the beginning and Quark now.
Yeah.
Because even though Sisko was willing to blackmail him on occasion and willing to bribe him on occasion, he also went out of his way to help Quark when Quark needed it.
That's true.
And that is not something that another Ferengi would have done, at least in that old Ferengi that Quark claims to love.
Yeah.
So if he reflects on what he's learned, I think he's learned something which will change him, if only slightly. And then I say these two things because there's two people in the same place who are, radically changed. But then I think Bashir, same place, same person, 7 years later. What has he learned?
Same juvenile holodeck programs.
Not my favorite. The timing of the story in the fire caves alongside the Dominion battle makes absolutely no sense. It took at least a day, right, to fly over to Cardassia, which means it would have taken at least a day to fly back. And on top of that, however much time they spent on Cardassia. But there also must have been some time that they spent on the station afterwards because we had the signing of the end of the war and we had the party. And we had everybody getting, having their montage. We had all that stuff going on.
You might be able to explain that with they were wandering in the caves for days.
Yeah, but the story of them down on the ledge, they were on that ledge forever then.
Okay.
Is time different in the caves?
No. So they were wandering around in the caves all during the battle and the surrender scenes, except the part where she activates the caves.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in terms of actual timing when Sisko was at the party.
So they just spread it out.
Yes.
But that's not the timing of it.
But the timing isn't exactly one for one in the episode.
Because if it is, it makes no sense.
Right.
It's a complete mess, honestly.
So the prophets gave him the warning when she turned the cave on.
Okay.
And that was at the point where he was dancing with Casti. That's how I interpret it.
Okay. Okay.
That's my headcanon.
Okay, I think there's a problem there. That's how I see it.
I am waving my hands very frantically at it.
Hand wave, hand wave, hand wave. Yeah, we haven't had that in a while.
Yeah.
Next thing, and we talked about this a little bit already, but it's maybe the most beautiful circle of all is the one that Odo was sent out to learn more about the solids, and he's the one who actually did go out and learn about the solids, not Laws. Laws did nothing.
Yep, he reinforced their bigotry.
But maybe I'm going to hopefully blow your mind.
Okay.
Maybe we're being too harsh on the founders, and that if we think about it, their plan actually worked. They sent out these babies to go out and learn about the solids and come back to them with info, right? And help them to learn. And it worked with Odo. It didn't work with the rest of them. It's a good thing they sent out a bunch of them. But now Odo is going to bring them back, and he's going to help them evolve. It's a very long game, but maybe this was their plan all along.
Oh.
And they got a little bit lost in just trying to protect themselves because they started to feel threatened. But they were still waiting for these babies to come back and help them evolve.
Interesting. So this was their evolutionary approach. Baby changelings would come back and bring back the knowledge so they could become a better race, or they could evolve themselves. And Odo's kind of short-circuited that.
He didn't short-circuit it. He's actually the one who realized it.
Oh, he came back earlier. He wasn't supposed to be back for hundreds of years.
Well, okay. Oh, yeah, but he's the only one who's learned anything, even though it was the shortest time. Yeah.
This is where my idea comes in of, I think he traveled through the wormhole and the prophets changed him. Or he was exposed to something. Odo is an evolution of the founders. He has characteristics the other founders do not seem to either have or appreciate, or even worse, maybe eradicated because it made them weaker. I mean, the evil founder, she talked about she doesn't want to show weakness. They want to project this strength. And Odo almost feels like he doesn't have to.
And now I'm going to bring this full circle back to my Star Trek answer and say, maybe, yes, maybe he was evolved differently by the wormhole aliens or radiation or whatever. But he saw the realization of a better way through the Federation.
Agreed. So over the time he's been on the show, he's actually changed and learned the value of the Federation. Yeah,
it wasn't just the love of Kira, which I think is what they wanted us to believe.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying about the Federation, well, Starfleet in particular, impacting Quark and impacting Kira and impacting Garrick. And also, I think to a large degree, impacting Odo.
Maybe part of the thing with Odo is he's the first changeling to actually be receptive to it, that actually has the ability.
Oh, totally. Which could be your point about how he evolved physically differently.
Right.
I guess that one is kind of an overanalysis point, so you could move that back up.
That's a good overanalysis point, Kim.
Okay, just a couple other things in this section. One thing is just my poor sad Jake barely had a line in the finale.
Yeah, we needed more Jake.
I'm very disappointed we didn't get closure with Sisko and Jake. To me, that's a real letdown and a real failure in the episode.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we could have dumped one of Vic's songs to have something between Jake and Sisko.
Yeah, you could have used that time productively.
I read that the showrunner felt it was more meaningful to have Jake waiting for his dad to return, but I really disagree. If you didn't want to do a goodbye scene with the two of them and you needed Jake to just accept what was happening, you should have at least had Sisko acknowledge Jake's existence when he was talking to Cassidy, right, in that vision. Or he could have left his son something, because his life was in danger all the time during this war.
Yeah.
You would think there would have been a recording or something that he left, right, in case something happened to him. So there must have been something, but we didn't even get to see that. And instead, somehow we were supposed to really feel the longing of Jake. And I just felt like I got cheated because they spent this entire show building that relationship.
Yeah.
I agree it was a little quieter in the last couple of seasons, as maybe because Jake got older, but that relationship was groundbreaking. And then we just went, never mind. It's no big deal. Jake can just stand here and look out the window.
Yeah, he can wait for his dad.
I really felt that was a failing in this episode.
Yeah, I would agree. Even if it's just Sisko telling Jake to just carry on. Don't wait for me. Your destiny lies elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Because now what's he going to do? Just sit there and do nothing in Deep Space Nine forever? I mean, or if you don't want to do that, show him moving on. Show him going down to Bajor and building the house. Ugh, I don't know. I think Jake was the worst treated.
Agreed, that was a miss.
Okay, I'm going to move on to some of my surprises before I do women in the future.
Okay.
I am surprised we didn't see Benny.
Oh, I'd never even considered that.
I thought we would, but we didn't.
One last try by the Pares?
Or let's just, make the little joke that it was all maybe in somebody's crazy mind and never really happened. I don't know. I thought maybe we'd see him.
That would have been good, yeah.
Not surprised by Sisko going into the wormhole.
Yep.
I'd heard that a while ago. I knew that was coming, but I didn't know any details about it.
Yeah.
I just knew that that's how the show ended, was with him being in the wormhole. I didn't quite know how the war was going to end, but I was pretty confident Odo was going to go back to the Great Link. That didn't really surprise me. I was very surprised that the founder woman was taken off to jail. I'm not sure it makes sense. I'm not sure you can hold her in jail, but that I didn't see coming.
They just get a bucket with a very strong lid.
Right. I shouldn't have been surprised that Damar died. I guess I was surprised he died so early in the episode.
Yeah.
But he kind of had to die for the story. And I had no idea about any of the Dukat Winn Sisko stuff in the fire caves.
Excellent.
I knew nothing about any of that. That was all a total surprise. I really hoped when Dukat went down the first time that was it for Dukat. And I thought, James has just been joking with me that he's not dead.
I don't know if him being stuck with the Pares is a worse ending for him.
Yeah, it's maybe cruel. I don't know, because I don't know what they go through.
But if he was a Pares, it's just he's back where he belongs.
Yeah, exactly. He's back with his friends. Okay, now I'm going to go to women in the future, and I feel a little funny about the ending of the women characters in this prolonged episode. Jadzia Dax done totally wrong by. Really bad, I thought. I read that there was some drama about her maybe appearing in the finale, but then ultimately Terry Farrell didn't release any of her scenes to be in the montage scenes. But I also feel like victim blaming. I don't know that I believe any of that, but ultimately it was a character done wrong by, I think.
Yeah.
Kai Winn, basically a woman, not very smart, throughout the story. She made some errors in judgment, yes, but also she made some kind of dumb decisions too. And she's definitely quite evil.
Do you think those decisions, because she was blinded by her ambition, she was looked at a lot of things of how she was going to benefit?
Sometimes. But remember that the one where Belial dies, they really implied she didn't know what the hell she was doing.
Oh.
Like she was incapable of diplomacy and, she really needed the man to do it. And I didn't like any of that stuff because they didn't need to make her incompetent.
Right.
Because they wouldn't have done that with a male character.
And it didn't really fit that she would be incompetent.
No.
Not for a political figure like her.
Yeah, so I didn't like that. So there's something there that kind of bothers me. And just based on our conversation here, she can be looked at as an incredibly tragic character, as she was maybe being toyed with and manipulated all along by the Paw race or the prophets, and then ultimately just discarded as nothing. And if you look at it that way, her hypocrisy was completely earned.
Yes.
She deserved her hypocrisy because it was, why not? Onto Ezri, got a boyfriend. Who cares? She barely had anything to do in the last episode.
I feel they dropped the ball with Ezri.
They had all these episodes about her that, were sort of mediocre. And then at the end they go, nah, and she's got nothing.
Yeah.
Well, she had some good ones, some mediocre ones, which is typical. But I just, disappointing ending.
I think the last part of it, the girlfriend for Julian, not a good ending.
Julian didn't have a lot to do either in the last episode, but he had a couple episodes leading up to it. Kira, such an interesting journey for her. Because, she's come full circle. She's back where she started, but in a totally different place in her life.
Yep. And she got a baseball out of it.
She did. But she, too, in the final episode, got sort of a finale about her boyfriend and how her boyfriend's life and reason for existence completely changed, but hers didn't because she was just back in the same place she was at the beginning. I have mixed feelings about this because I think the story needed that to happen and they needed it to come full circle and for her to end up where she started. I think that was necessary. But I just can't help feeling like maybe we missed something here because of that. But at the same time, Kira, total hero. She's the one who saved Cardassia. Odo pushed them over the line because somebody needed to with that extremely powerful founder, but she's the hero of the story.
Yeah.
So amazing. Okay, we have arrived at rating, and this is only for this episode, not for the entire season, not for the entire series, but let's just do rating for this episode. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. An enjoyable episode and a great way to wrap up the series. I liked what happened. It was a good ending to the show. And there's shows that have had endings I've despised.
That's true. Yeah. I don't see how you could watch this and not give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
It's a thumbs up. I was definitely a little disappointed in a couple things like Jake. That was annoying.
Yeah.
And I do think they really did wrong by Jadzia, who was in 6 seasons of this show. We didn't even mention her. If you couldn't show her, okay, but you could have mentioned her. That I didn't like. But I think they did a pretty good job overall with everything.
Yeah, there were some misses in there.
Maybe they wasted a bit too much time singing with Vic, and we could have spent some more time with Winn, but whatever.
Could have got Sisko singing.
Yeah, Sisko singing. That's true. But anyway, thumbs up. Excellent episode.
I would agree.
Well, that wraps up the entire show.
We have watched all of them. We have watched every episode and commented on them. We have rebinged Deep Space Nine 1 episode at a time.
Yeah. Well, from here, we have a couple of plans. The next episode, we will do a normal season wrap-up, just like we always do. Then we're going to do an episode where we watch the documentary about Deep Space Nine called What We Left Behind. Is that what it was called?
What We Left Behind, looking back at Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
So I believe that's available on Amazon Prime. So if you want to watch that and then listen to the episode on that. And then we're planning to do sort of a full series wrap up.
Yep.
And we'll talk about the show overall. We've talked a lot about stuff here, but we'll try to cover some different things and the overall arcs and sort of how it fits into Star Trek and whatever our thoughts are on the overarching show.
Yeah, favorite episodes, things we thought were spectacular for Star Trek.
Favorite episodes for sure. And I'm just going to tell you, worst hair is Kira in season 7. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Wow. So it beats the extra in the background of Vortex.
And then the last thing we'll probably do at Deep Space Nine is, as I mentioned a couple times, we're going to go back and watch the pilot. So the episode called Emissary. And then we're going to listen to our own podcast. And we're going to do a little bit of our own overanalysis of our overanalysis for how we started.
Maybe a little bit of a critique on our first podcast.
Yeah. And then that will be a wrap. So you've still got a few episodes to go before we move on to Voyager. And what we will be doing when we get to the end of all those episodes is we'll be switching to a podcast called ReBingeIT, and we will be watching Star Trek Voyager. And good news, sounds like Prodigy is coming back with season 2. And so our podcast about Prodigy will also be in that same feed, ReBingeIT.
Soon as we can get back to episodes of Prodigy, Rebinge Star Trek Prodigy will be back on the cards, people. Back on the menu.
That's amazing news. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we could get a season 3.
Oh, that would be awesome. So for now, that wraps up season 7, episode 25. Come back next week for the season 7 wrap up. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you want to say something nice, you can always email us at rebingeit@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on what used to be called Twitter and Instagram and Threads at ReBingeIT. You can also find us on YouTube at ReBingeIT. You can check us out on the Talk Through Media Facebook page, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.